Hey, what's up, everybody? Kendall here. Welcome back to another episode of the Wealthy Legacy Journey. I'm hoping that you guys worked on your wealthy legacy journey this week, and I would love to hear, what kind of moves you've made. Let me know in the comments below. I'm always excited to start to see some traction from you guys about what you got out of the episode, what you may have received from something that I said. And then also some things that were applied that worked and all that kind of stuff. I'd love to hear and see breakthroughs. But today's episode, I'm very, very excited to tell you guys that the name is We Tripled Our Money. First sale done, which is so exciting. So we sold our first product actually through Etsy. It was on the Etsy, eBay, Cozy Home Knickknacks shop that we started up with Double Dare Your Money. If you're not super familiar with Double Dare Your Money, make sure you go check out that series of Double Dare Your Money and what all we're doing over there. But I want to dig into what happened here because I'm just so excited about it. But it's so tangible, like on this smaller level of what can happen at a bigger level as well. And so we ended up selling this colander. So it's sold, it's been shipped. There was so much to learn going through that process. But it's super cool because we did triple our money on it. So we purchased that colander for $5.49. Our sales price minus the shipping. So, after we took out our shipping costs, what we were left with is $16.62. And so that comes out to a 203% ROI plus we received our initial investment back. And so that essentially triples our money. We turned $5.49 into $16.62, which is so exciting. Now, throughout this, it's so important that whenever we're starting something up, we just take action, right? Because, for example, when Libby and I, first set out to do this, we didn't know exactly what shipping costs were going to take. We forgot about needing a shipping box. We were collecting some stuff for, like packing supplies as we went. But basically, once the thing was bought, it was like, okay, now we got to figure out how to ship this thing. And so I went and I actually I found a really good deal on a box. And it was a dollar at the store. When I showed up, it was 99 cents on their website. I showed up to the store, it was like $3.20 on the shelf. And at first I just went to grab it. And then I was like, because that's been kind of one of my habits in the past. And I was like, no, I've got to get my initial investment into stuff lower. And so I went to the front and I was like, hey, this says 99 cents on the website, but it was $3.20 on the shelf. I looked it up. The item number is the same. So this thing is priced at a dollar. We all basically match your website. We honor your website price. And they did. Another thing is that I could have bought the roll of packing tape because we didn't have any packing tape. So I could have bought the roll of packing tape there at the store and it was going to be like $5 or $6 or something like that for the tape. But my wife said, well, you can go to the dollar store and you can buy the packing tape for $1.25. And so it was really hard because I wanted to be like, man, my time that it's going to take me to drive over there is worth more. But I really had to step back and think about Double Dare Your Money as like a single thing, as its single own little fund. And so it's like it doesn't matter what my time input is. Now that doesn't carry true forever, right? But our goal is just continue doubling, doubling, doubling. And so the less that we can absorb back out of those costs, and we can put back in. At first we're going to start with small doubles, but those doubles are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's that compounding effect. So we got to keep as much on the compounding wealth building snowball as possible and not pull away as much as possible. And so I had to go to one dollar store. They were out of stock, went to another dollar store on the way home. They had it. And so we were able to get pretty significant discounts. And basically I was thinking about it and I was like, wow. So like if I had bought, a $6 roll of tape and a $3 box, plus some change, it would have been about $10 probably all said and done for my shipping supplies. Whereas my investment in shipping supplies was 99 cents plus $1.25 plus some tax. So I think it was like $1.07 plus $1.35, which comes out to $2.47 if my math is correct. It was quick math, so it may be wrong. $2.47, something like that. So about a 400% decrease in my supply costs, which is massive. For a big company, if they could have a 400% decrease in supply costs, that would be huge. And so really, I would encouraging myself, and I'd also encourage you. We've got to look at the ROIs and the breakdowns of everything we're doing here from a percentage basis. What is our ROI on a percentage basis? Let's not look at this on a dollar by dollar basis, because if we can keep the ROI percentage high, that compounding effect is going to be powerful as we build, 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 build to these levels. So, anyways, another really cool part about this, actually, you know what? I don't want to get too much into the weeds on the Double Dare Your Money. So I'm actually going to create a separate video for the first sale for Double Dare Your Money. So if you're curious about some other insights and stuff that I had on the first sale, make sure you go check out that video. But I'm actually going to go ahead and jump in from this point on into the rest of the stuff that I had for today's episode. So one of the things that Libby and I are both really working on, and I think it's going to probably be the word of the year for both Libby and I in a lot of ways, and a lot of what we do, is going to be the word focus. And one of the cool things that Libby and I have been doing is we've been holding each other accountable to this level of focus. And when one of us starts to stray and we start to do stuff that is unfocused, we just look at each other and we say, hey, focus. Focus on what your goals are. And we just tell that to each other often. And I even found the other day myself, I was thinking about an idea and I just told myself, I said, you know what? I need just to focus. Focus. I need to focus. Yesterday I walked a property, and I was talking to the seller and they were telling me about all these things that they did. And I told them about how Libby and I were really challenging ourselves this year to focus. And I told him about how we just looked at each other and we just say focus, focus. And we just really are pushing that into each other. Like, you have your goals, focus on those goals. And I told the seller, and she's like, wow, that's really good. I think I might use that. And so it's just really cool. Like, this power of focusing is so important. I read it. We've read many books at this point, or multiple books for the Wealthy Legacy Journey. And a lot of them have this idea of focus as some sort of some level. It's a core principle of what they're discussing and they're talking about. And so it's so important for you and I to stay focused on what our goal is. And so even whenever we go back to the Double Dare Your Money, it's like I had to focus on the importance of what I was doing there being to double my money, to keep my ROI as high as possible, which means I had to keep my expenses as low as possible. And so it's really important. With that said, though, we're looking at our lives right now in a way of just going like, hey, what do we need to keep? What do we need to get rid of? What needs to stay, what needs to go, as far as like what's going to be able to help keep us focused. And so, one of the things that we actually made the executive decision on that we're doing is we're getting rid of our farm. So actually, as of this moment, the only animals that we have left on our property is the dogs. We have 3 dogs. But the chickens are gone. No, I take that back. The rabbits are still here. The rabbits are on their way out the door. We got rid of the rabbits. We got rid of the chickens. We're not going to get any sheep. We're not going to get anything else. We're just going to focus in on our goals, which right now is to build our wealth snowball. We're right in this journey with you guys, starting from, a little, building to a lot, building our wealth snowball, and focusing on raising our 3 children, and our marriage. And so it's just how do we keep the responsibilities down so we're able to really focus and pour into what counts. So where do we have time to be able to have our quiet time to pour in our relationship with the Lord every single morning? How do we keep our responsibilities down so that way we're not exhausted when it comes to being with our kids, being able to pour into them? How can we keep our monetary strains, requests, draws down, so that way we can pour into the investments that we are most excited about, that we feel like are going to bear the greatest amount of fruit for us. And so I'll be honest with you guys, like, if it weren't for the Wealthy Legacy Journey, I wouldn't be doing Double Dare Your Money. And if I wasn't doing Double Dare Your Money, I also wouldn't be doing the eBay and the Etsy stuff. Libby and I really had a hard conversation actually about Double Dare Your Money and whether that was something that we should continue doing as we're cutting out responsibilities. And we both just ended up agreeing that the Wealthy Legacy Journey, we believe, can be very powerful. And Double Dare Your Money really is a lot about looking at how we started, even going all the way back to K&L Wood Designs and some of the things that we did back in high school, and the lessons learned there that can apply at higher levels. And so we feel like it's actually crucial that if we're going to do the wealthy legacy journey, that we have something like Double Dare Your Money to show that it is possible. It's one of the things that I'm so passionate about, is that showing that this absolutely is possible. Um, but yeah, so one of the other things that we're focusing on is trying to remove stuff from our weekends. And so this past weekend we had a pretty relaxing Sunday, and it was our Saturday, and it was so good. Oh, excuse me. Oh, you can see from my yawn, it's been a really busy week so far. I know you guys usually are watching this on a Monday, but I record this today's Thursday, and Thursday before it comes out. And last Sunday we went to the Super Bowl, and it was a really great game. It was the Chiefs and the 49ers. Chiefs won. It was crazy. It went to overtime. It was such a good game. We stayed out way too late, especially with the little kiddos. And then last night was Valentine's Day, and Libby and I had a really great date night. But then being out the date night, and then we had to go pick up our kiddos because they were with the grandparents, and then take them home, put them to bed, and then us get to bed, and we were just exhausted again by the time we got to bed. I actually just I was sat in the bed, and I was sitting there just kind of like in quiet time, just thinking, while Libby was getting ready for bed, and I just fell asleep. Like while I was just sitting there, and Libby came in and was like, "Hey, are you asleep?" And I was like, "Man, I'm just so tired. Like I'm doing so many different things." Um, and so really in saying that, it's like I'm really trying to figure out what's important, what's not important, because I think, Libby and I even talked about this. Something that's really a part of the American culture is that it's like highly valued to be busy, and being busy isn't necessarily being productive. And so what we're really doing is going, hey, all of these things are probably that we're doing are productive at some level, but which are our highest performers of productivity, which are our lowest performers of productivity. So for example, we can purchase farm fresh eggs and not have our own chickens, and that makes it to where we don't have to buy chicken feed, we don't have to worry about feeding the chickens, we don't have to worry about collecting the eggs from the chickens, and we can still get it still makes sense to buy the nicer eggs, and that's totally okay. So we don't have to worry about farm fresh eggs. So when we were like looking at that investment, it was like, yes, do we save a little bit of money doing this? Yes. But is it worth the amount of time invested into this endeavor? No. At the end of the day, it wasn't, especially when you look at things like what we're doing, with Double Dare Your Money. I think it's going to be big in the long run. We got to get that snowball building. But then you also look at things such as what we're trying to accomplish with the tax sales, and those are going to have a way greater return on investment for us, as well as just what we can do with our personal time. So yeah, it was interesting though, because as we get down to focus, some people are on the side of the spectrum where they try to tackle way too many things. And the problem with that is that you're doing a whole bunch of things okay, maybe good, but nothing great. And until you do something that's absolutely great, you're not going to be able to experience big breakthrough, all the time. A very big saying in the business space is that the riches are in the niches, meaning that you have to really get dialed in and focused at claiming your small territory. That's like, this is what I'm the best in the world at. And then you build a successful brand, you build a successful business. And then once you have that established, then you actually are going to be able to have the capital to continue expanding in small ways. But you don't want to expand in ways that are confusing to your brand. You have to still stay brand centric. You have to stay focused on what is the core of what it is that you do, and continue just to add on pieces that are complementary to what your overall current mission and goal is. So the other side of that coin, though, and that's the one that I struggle with a little bit more, is the staying focused. I can do a whole bunch of things and I execute. Mine's harder to stay to the staying focused. The other side of the coin is that there are some people who just struggle to take action. But I read this quote from Robert Kiyosaki this last week, one of his email newsletters, and he said, "If you do nothing, you learn nothing. If you learn nothing, you remain poor. So remember, the only way you can fail is to fail to do something. Because if you fail to do something, you'll do nothing, you'll remain poor, you'll remain in the exact same position that you're in." And some of the behavior changes that we're looking for don't always even result in a monetary result, right? But it might just improve your quality of life somehow, right? Pulling away all these tons of tasks that I'm trying to do to just really focus on what's most important to me, that in my certain goals, I know will improve my monetary position, but it'll improve my quality of life as well because I'm not just going around exhausted, just trying to do everything, right? And so that would be my encouragement to you guys is that make sure that what you're doing is, really dialed in, you're focused on what's really important, but also if you're on the side of camp where you're just struggling to take action, make sure that you're doing something. Um, so with that, for me, in learning how to dial things in, one of the things that I'm doing this week is I'm reducing the number of goal posters that I have. And I'm focusing. I'm really going to dial on the FOCUS focus. And so I think I started out this year with like 12 goal posters, and I realized I just hit the point where I wasn't even checking them off every day. And I was like, I'd gotten way too big for my britches. I bit off way more than I could chew. I was like, I need to really focus this into the things that are most important to me. So one of the things I'm working on this week is how do I really look at what is important to me that I absolutely want to get done. Um, that if I get these things done, it'll improve my monetary position. That if I do these things, it'll improve the quality of my life somehow. And all of them could improve my quality of life, but which are going to have the greatest return on investment, not even necessarily just financially speaking, but also just in my life. What is going to have the greatest return in my life that I'm going to be like, yes, I'm so glad that I did that. Um, and looking at short term and long term stuff. And so stay tuned. Hopefully next week I have an answer on that about some of the things that I cut and some of the things that I decided to keep and why. One of the things around focus, though, is this week I actually saw this idea, which I've seen before. And they were like, hey, you can, help people who have just gone through foreclosure get the surplus funds from their foreclosure. And, basically all you do is you get this list and you call them up and you just help them get their money. And you can usually get like a third of the deal. So it's like, hey, if they had $100,000 surplus. So for example, if they had 50,000 on their mortgage, they got foreclosed on, it went to the foreclosure sale, sold for 150, there's $100,000 spread. You get a third. Basically it's like you call them up and you're willing to work on a commission basis. If you can get the money, you go get the money for them, you get a third of the deal, they get 2/3 of the deal. And it's like, oh, awesome, that's great. And I saw that and I've seen it before. And I told Libby, I was like, I started thinking on it first before I talked to Libby about it. And I was like, man, like, especially with everything I did with NTX, working with foreclosure sellers, kind of on the before they got foreclosed side, I was like, I understand the lingo, I understand those people, I understand the language that they're speaking, why they're in those positions, a lot of the times. And I was like, this is something that I could do. Like, I could really do this. I can make, I heard the dollar signs, like the dollar signs are going off. And it's like, this is something I could do. And immediately I started thinking that I was like, this isn't focused. This isn't focused on my goals. Like, my goals right now are to just figure out how to in the simple way that I already know how to do, if possible, cover my monthly expenses, and then from there do the tax sales because I really want to build wealth. I want to do my own investing, and I also want to enter into a vehicle that I can build passive cash flow off of. And so, but I really started thinking about it, and I was like, man, this could be really cool. Maybe I should at least watch the webinar. And so I went and I talked to Libby about it, and I was like, "Hey, Lib, I need you to hear my whole idea before you say anything. Just hear me out." And she's like, "Okay, so before I tell you to FOCUS, you want me to hear what you have to say?" And I laughed, and I was like, "Hey, you don't even know what I'm going to say." But obviously, she knew that I had some sort of idea because that's how it always kind of starts. So I told her the idea, and she had some really good feedback for me. She was like, I think that's a really cool idea. And she goes, I think you really could do that, but I think you need to give what you're working on right now a fair chance. And she was so right. Like the wisdom that she had, and when she said that was so good. It's so easy to make a quick reaction decision of, oh, this is going to work. Oh, this isn't going to work based off of a very short window of time. Whenever it's like, we've really got to give some of these things that we're trying to build here a fair shot. And it was interesting because I think it was the next day, if I remember correctly, but I read this verse in my quiet time, Psalms 41-4. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined to me and heard my cry. He brought me up out of the pit of destruction, out of the miry clay, and he set my feet upon a rock, making my footsteps firm. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and will trust in the Lord. How blessed is the man who made the Lord his trust and has not turned to the proud nor to those who lapse into falsehood. And one of the things that I got out of that is how I'm so much like a child in so many ways, including the fact that, God has helped me so many times out of these difficult situations, put me up on the rock. And then after I'm feeling good again, I'm like, oh, look, there's the mud. I want to go play in the mud. So I go jump in the mud. And then all of a sudden I'm like crying, like, God, come help me. I'm in the mud and I'm tired and I'm dirty and I need help. And just like my kids do sometimes. So he picks me up and he cleans me off and he sets me on the rock. And then all of a sudden I just feel like, oh, thank you so much, Lord, that you helped me out. And I take a breather and then I'm feeling good again. And I'm like, oh, hey, look, there's mud. And then like we just do this thing. And so I'm like, how do I not do that again? And so I really started thinking like onto my past ventures. And I started thinking about like what have I done that's worked and how long did it really take to get that up and off the ground? And I realized like it's taken me between the two things that have worked really well, and you got to remember that those are actually equity partnerships. So I'm stepping into somebody else's process. It took me an average of 7.5 months to get something off of the ground to the point where we were actually producing more cash than we were consuming every single month. And that's actually, I would say, pretty quickly, but that's because of that equity partnership, that, getting it spun up off the ground. So it flips, it took 11 months. With the land deals with Labrador Partners, it took about 5 months, if I remember correctly, 4 or 5 months. Libby and I just talked about it the other day. And so, anyways, average out at 7.5 months. And I've also done a bunch of other things that I couldn't really put an exact timeline, or they just didn't break through to that point. And so, if you were to account for all those, I would say timeline probably definitely gets bumped up. But then it was interesting because yesterday at Libby and I's date for Valentine's Day, we attended a pottery class, and the main, I don't know what they're called, they're the artist, the main guy who was teaching the class, he had an assistant. And so I asked his assistant, I was like, how long have you been doing this? And how long have you been, working here? And she said that she had been, I think they said throwing pottery, if I'm correct, something like that, for 4.5 years. And she had been working there for, I think she said a little over 3 years or 3 years, something like that. And so I was like thinking about that and I was like, okay, so like if you think about that, it took her about 18 months to go from never doing it to proficient enough to get a job doing it, and then continuing to increase her skill sets over the last few years. And so I kind of chewed on that and I was like, okay, well, and thinking on that, that kind of makes sense. Like it probably took her about, 12 to 8, maybe it took her the full 18 months, but I'd say probably about 12 months she was proficient. Maybe she was doing some of her own stuff. And then maybe she was just looking for a way to help cover the bills in the meantime while she built up her own business and brand. And so that's when she went and got a job a couple months later. But you can see that kind of like having never done something to, being able to build up proficiency, it's pretty reasonable if you give it, really a solid amount of attention to be able to get there in about probably 9 to 12 months or so, maybe even 7.5. But it's going to take diligence. Um, and so, even so, I was telling Libby, I was like, that kind of makes a lot of sense because we've been doing the Wealthy Legacy journey now for about 9 months, and I can finally see between the views and the amount of clicks and the audience and traction it's getting on YouTube, like it's starting to gain some momentum. Um, I can see that with, I was like, okay, so for Double Dare Your Money, I'm already thinking like that might take about, I think our goal point there would probably be about 7.5 to 9 months. Is it gaining, has it gained significant momentum from month 0 to month 9 to make sure that it's worth continuing to go forward? And then in the tax sales, I even thought, because obviously last month we didn't purchase anything at the tax sales. And so it was a little bit disappointing. And it was like, okay, I've had the question already of like, how long do I give this thing before I look to switch vehicles? And I know that I need to give it some time, but what is the answer? What is that, self Entre Leadership by Dave Ramsey talks about you have to set like a self-defined deadline, something like that. But basically, our self-determined deadline, something like you have to set a deadline for yourself of when you're expecting to see results and what results you're expecting to see. And so this just kind of breaking down what we've done in the past was like, I think about the 9 month mark is a pretty good determination of, setting that goal to see, have we reached certain milestones, certain markers, have we received certain results? And it was interesting because whenever you come to the number of about 9 months, obviously you think, well, at least for me, I think of labor, probably because I have 3 little kids. So my wife, would be, Libby's pregnant for about 9 months. And then all of a sudden she goes into labor and we have a baby. And I realized, though, one of my mistakes as I was reflecting on this week was that I've pushed multiple business models through labor in that labor, or I shouldn't say through labor, through that, like, 9 month almost like pregnancy period where you're planting the seeds and you're letting them grow and going to that uncomfortable stuff. And at the very end, you're pushing through that labor. And so it's just a lot of like very uncomfortable, difficult things you have to go through to get the business started. And that is true. That is how it goes. But with that said, um, I realized that it's important not to relish in the breakthrough that you experience too early. Because you see, for me, my mistake is that after that, initial kind of 9 month investment period, I had pushed all the way through, but I had this tendency looking back to begin to relax after the breakthrough because I thought, man, I'm so tired. I don't have the energy to continue on, instead of saying, how do I continue on? But then with that said, on the other side of the coin, I realized that I was putting myself through absolute burnout in that first phase, to where I didn't have any umph or any heart or any desire to continue giving to it in the back half. And so really kind of my thoughts right now is, how can I invest into something for that first period of time, but then after that period of time is over, knowing that, hey, I've been doing this for a while, but I have to keep going. That's kind of one side of the coin. But on the other side of the coin, how do I not absolutely trash myself? How do I absolutely burn myself out on that thing, but I build it in such a way that is sustainable? Um, and so, like, when I think about that, really for me right now, I'm thinking about tax sales and I'm thinking about double dare your money. How do I build those in such a way that's sustainable? And I guess you could even say the wealthy legacy journey is a perfect example. When I first started the wealthy legacy journey, I wanted to put out like a daily quote of the day. I wanted to do the weekly episodes. I wanted to do like a weekly interview podcast. I wanted to do like all these different things. But I was like, that's way too much. I'm not going to be able to keep all that up. And so I reduced it all the way back down to a weekly podcast. And I've gotten so much into a rhythm of doing that. Now I've also allowed myself the opportunity to expand that just a little bit. And now I'm trying to also add in a weekly Facebook post into the Facebook page, something along the lines of the episode. And it's very short, very sweet, but it's just kind of like a blip on the Facebook page and then publishing the episode. And so it's just taking those steps very slowly. The last thing I want to finish on is that this morning I read 3 news articles that kind of mess with my mind a little bit. And I want to talk about what those are and how I handled those. One, I read an article, CNN, Japan is in a recession. Let me just see here because I don't want to misquote this. So this is in my Chrome. I made sure I left them up. So I'm just going to read the headline here. But Japan slips. Oh, well, it looks like the headline just changed. Now it says Japan just lost its crown as the world's 3rd largest economy. Japan's economy has contracted unexpectedly because of weak domestic consumption, pushing the country into recession and causing it to lose its position as the world's 3rd largest economy to Germany. So originally it had said slipped into recession. The other one said Britain falls into recession with the worst GDP performance in 2023 in years. Excuse me. The last one, former Home Depot CEO issues warning on the tremendous shift in the U.S. job market. Cites wage increases, still hot inflation for the big change. Here's what he means and how to prepare. Excuse me, I didn't read that very well at all. Sorry. But one was about the labor market. One was about Japan dipping into recession. One was about Britain dipping into recession. And right now, with them raising, rates and keeping rates higher, and everybody's concerned about this like soft landing with the U.S. economy, you read these things, it's easy to start getting concerned. One thing I want to say to remind myself and you guys is that these guys on the news, they make money from you going to their content. The way that they can get you to go to their content is with clickbait titles. They create titles that they think will draw people in. Most people are most attracted to great fear or great pleasure. And so you're going to see most headlines are playing on making you fearful, where you feel like you need to engage that content to understand, which is honestly why I engage that content. I'll be very honest about that. Or to move you towards pleasure, where you're like, wow, if I go consume that content, this might help me to move towards pleasure. And that's honestly where we're positioning the wealthy legacy journey. We're kind of that move towards pleasure, more of positioning in the market. And that's why we picked the name and everything like that. So I was a little bit concerned. Um, and I thought, well, what does this mean? And how do I handle that information? And I thought, I think one of the biggest things that I have to realize is that just means that I have to protect myself by buying at a discount. Benjamin Graham, in his investments for the stock market, he talked about having a margin of safety. So here's what you evaluate it. You think this is what it's worth. Then you have a margin of safety on top of that. See, that's where I'm willing to purchase it at. So the deeper the margin of safety, the more protected you are. So maybe in a time where the economy is roaring, your margin of safety can be a little bit tighter. But maybe in a time when you see like this, where things are kind of concerning, your margin of safety needs to be a little bit deeper. And so I really thought about that in perspective of real estate. And I think the key here is that I just need to make sure that I'm buying deep. I'm buying at a significant discount, and I need to just wait. So the book that I'm reading right now, The Science of Hitting, and I can't remember the author's name. I don't have the book right here, but The Science of Hitting, which is recommended by Warren Buffett. He talks about just, basically waiting for the right pitch. And Warren Buffett's kind of interpretation of that book is he says investing is a zero strike game. So I can let 100 balls go by and not get a single strike. But when that right ball comes down over the plate, knock it out of the park. And so, really that's kind of been my mindset of like, how do I know these deals, I know the real estate. So how do I make sure that I'm positioning myself in a very strategic spot when I'm purchasing? Now, there's also a balance there because I do want to deploy my capital. So I don't want to just leave my capital on the sidelines for months and months on end because I'm looking for the perfect deal. Warren Buffett's in a little bit different position there because he has hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars at his disposal. So he needs a much bigger deal. There should be deals that I could be able to find. I've just got to figure out what those deals look like and make sure that when I find them, I'm prepared to execute. Two examples, though, that I want to give you guys as we close out is one example with Labrador Partners. When I worked with them, when things started getting slow in the market, when I was working with them, I would just throw on the listing. Hey, I would put, I'd get it, I'd list it, and on the listing description, I would say, what would I say? I would say, uh, motivated seller, send all offers. That's what I'd say. I told them we did asterisk, 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 all caps, motivated seller dash send all offers. It was all caps and then asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. And then we had our little description from there. And what I would then would do is I typically price us just a little bit over, like right at the top of the market, maybe a little bit over the top of the market. And then I would say, hey, motivated seller, send all offers. They would end up, and I would say, okay, here's my bottom line. I don't want to go any less than this. And here's where we priced that. And usually I'd get an offer like somewhere in the middle of that range. And so we'd counter with something little, but it wasn't like a huge deal. And we'd take it because it was like, it was what we wanted to make anyways. And so that's the same mentality that I'm going to plug in here on the tax sales. And it's the same mentality that I'm going to plug in here at Double Dare Your Money. So an example on the plates is, and we learned from this first round that we didn't buy this stuff deep enough. And I kind of have alluded to that a few times. We didn't buy our products deep enough. And so, for example, we have not plates, cups. There's these coffee mugs that we got. We bought them for like $3.50 a piece. Realized that we really kind of overpaid for them, especially for turning them around for an investment. And so this week they're going up. I have 10 of them, and I just need to get my capital back out of the deal, which sometimes we have to do. So I'm looking at potentially liquidating at a loss on these coffee mugs. And so what I did is a 10-day bid on eBay. I took a really nice picture, really worked on making sure this thing looked really nice. And it's the bid starting off at $10 plus shipping and handling. And I have a buy it now offer at $40. So my all-in investment is $35. So if somebody came and bought it now at $40, I'd be able to get like, I think it'd be like a 20% ROI, which would be great. I'd be in the green. But then, if I could as long as I'm at $10 a cup, I'm making $1 per cup. So I'm taking a $2.50 loss per cup. But that just makes you realize, because I know there's other thrift stores, and I've learned since, where I can get similar types of mugs for 50 cents. I bought these for $3.50. And so I realized I just didn't buy this deep enough to begin with to allow me the freedom to be able to sell at a discount if I need to be able to liquidate without taking a loss. And so I know real estate a lot better than I know mugs. But the reason that we start with something as cheap as, $35 worth of coffee mugs is at the end of the day, if you lose it all of $35, it's not going to break the bank. Right. But the lesson that you can learn in going, I need to buy deeper because I might need to liquidate this at less than what I think it's worth in case something changes in the valuation. So I need to buy this based on more of worst case scenario instead of best case scenario. So I'm buying a worst case scenario. Of course, I'm trying to sell on best case scenario, but then if the market doesn't go the way that I'm expecting it to, like this, we haven't even really gotten any views. We've got no offers. So I'm realizing like we just don't, this is not either what the market wants or we're just not priced correctly. We need to be able to have the strategic ability to liquidate a discount without taking a loss. And so I'm trying to think about how I can apply that to the tax sales. And one of those ways being, don't, for myself, I'm even telling myself, don't try to just take one tax sale that didn't go well and go, okay, maybe I need to bump up, my threshold just so I can purchase properties. Because at the end of the day, if I just go to purchase properties, but then I push my threshold up too high, especially with some of the negative things happening in the market that could negatively impact me. Now there is the balance of making sure that my equity or my capital is deployed and it's not just sitting there, because I'd rather make money with my money than just let my money devalue because of inflation. Like I want to get something, but what is that balance? And that's what we're going to figure out week in and week out as we do this thing over and over and over. So anyways, guys, with all that said, that has been another episode of the Wealth Legacy Journey. Make sure that you check out the Double Dare Your Money video where we go a little bit more in depth on what happened during that sale and what the next steps are if you're interested in doubling your money, which you should be if you're looking to build some wealth. But with that said, we're going to close out with our identity mantra all together, and then we're going to get out of here. So say it with me, guys. I explore the unknown. I conquer new frontiers. My journey is powerful, and my wake is a wealthy legacy. And just a reminder for myself and for you guys, the way we define wealthy here at the Wealthy Legacy Journey is simply the ability to cover your monthly expenses without having to lift a finger. It's all about that passive investment income. And legacy is leaving a long-lasting impact on others who come after you as they receive the fruit of your labor, whether that fruit be good or bad. We're going to leave fruit, so let's make sure that we leave good fruit. We plant good seeds, we build good trees, and we leave good fruit. But as I said, don't forget, guys, check out the Google Docs for any resources, anything we talked about today or in previous episodes. If you want to get any of the books or see any of the quotes or watch any of the YouTube videos or anything like that, we got a whole bunch of awesome stuff over there. It's going to be the top of the description. There's going to be a link to a Google Doc that has all the stuff on there, and I hope you can get a lot of value out of that. With all that said, this has been another episode dedicated to you and your own wealthy legacy journey. Hope you guys have a fantastic week. You go out there, you build some wealth, do some of the right things. Let me know about what you're doing in the comments, and I will see you guys on the next episode. Bye, y'all.